Welcome back to the Big Trail Show. We have a very special guest joining us now. You know him, ESPN Arkansas Tye Richardson. Tye, what a game yesterday, right?
Down to the wire. Arkansas pulled it out. When Sam Pittman walked into the press conference room, he's like, whew, 1-0, and we just all started laughing. And that's kind of the vibe you got, that it was going to be close in the fourth quarter. I thought they were going to be able to pull away, but when you lost Catalon, you lost Slusher, the back end of that defense is not the same without those two guys. And they struggled a little bit, but they found a way to win. That's what matters.
Oh, definitely. Now, I understand you brought some props with you today.
I did.
To talk about the game. Do you want to bring out some of those props and tell us why you brought them today?
Yeah,
show and tell.
Absolutely.
On the show.
So first, we've got the beautiful SEC hat, just to remind everyone how much the conference dominated yesterday. And I want to give props to Florida for beating Cam Rising in Utah. That was a spectacular game. But you heard some SEC chants at the end of the ball game inside of Razorback Stadium. Give Luke Fickell and his ball club credit, because they came in and played their hearts out. But at the end of the day, the top dog's the top dog, and that was proven yesterday. Now, the second one would be the Tom Cruise Top Gun sunglasses. And these belong to KJ Jefferson, because once again, he is calm, cool, and collective in the biggest of moments. Sam Pittman said in the post-game press conference, don't y'all just feel like KJ plays his best when the game's on the line? He is just so clutch during the fourth quarter of football games. That was on display and evident once again. And the last one.
Oh, I like this one.
Let's put the old cowboy hat, Courtney. This one goes to Sam Pittman. When you think about Cowboys, you think about our state being country, blue collar, work hard. This guy worked his tail off in the offseason, not just keeping his staff assembled with, most importantly, Barry Odom and Kendall Briles, but how about the transfers that he was able to bring in? Matt Landers, who caught the opening pass and had a solid game. Jada Hayeswood had a touchdown. Landon Jackson, Drew Sanders had sacked. Jordan Dominic coming over from it was either Wake Forest or Georgia Tech. He has the big play in the fourth quarter, the strip sack and fumble recovery. And then Dwight Nudie McLaughlin, when Cincinnati was driving, looked like they were going to start from momentum in the first quarter, stopped that with a pick that he almost took back to the house. So the hard-working mentality paid off for Sam Pittman, busting his butt in the transfer portal this offseason.
I think you're so right. Yeah, I mean, you could have kept the cowboy hat on for the rest of the segment.
let's just do it for the rest of the segment.
I love it. You got to keep it on. I want to ask you something, Tye. You just mentioned all those transfers and all those guys who made an impact. It really felt like this was a team win, though, because there are some guys that you didn't mention. Trey Knox, Rocket Sanders. I was incredibly impressed.
Your player of the game.
My player
Rocket
of the game,
Sanders.
Rocket Sanders. I was incredibly impressed with his performance, but also Trey Knox. And in the press conference, you just mentioned it, everyone was giving him props. Everyone was giving him kudos. It almost seems like he was born to be a tight end, right? I mean, do you feel that way?
Yeah, he definitely bought into the offseason. So it's one thing to buy in and say, hey, I'm going to do this. It's another thing to put on 40 good pounds, good weight, which he's done. His blocking, he would tell you he still needs to improve on certain aspects of his blocking. He's the one that gave up that blindside hit to KJ yesterday. But his pass catching ability, the guy is 6'5" and can run. And so it's a linebacker issue because he doesn't have the speed. The safety is not tall enough to cover Trey, as we saw on the jump pass play, because the safety kind of came down, had pretty good coverage, but Trey just went up and plucked it out at the highest point. Trey put in the work, the effort. You heard it from KJ. You heard it from Coach Pittman. This is a guy in a new world we're living in college football, where most would just hit the portal and say, you know what, I want to play wide receiver somewhere else. He said, you know what, I'm going to buy into this tight end position, and it paid off as of yesterday. He walked over to Coach Pittman, and Coach asked him, you know, you glad you made the switch to tight end, huh? And he said, heck yes. I think he said something else, but he told us he said, heck yes, Courtney.
I love that. I love that quote as well, especially with how candid he was. Maybe I didn't use the word heck, but, you know.
He was honest. He was open.
I was happy about it anyways. I want to get your thoughts on the defense as well as a whole, because I know a lot of people had questions about that unit going into this season. How did you see them perform yesterday, and how do you think it's changed from last year to this year?
Well, I think there's question marks what it's going to look like the rest of the way. You're going to play some good quarterbacks. You got Spencer Rattler coming in, who had 2 interceptions against Georgia State yesterday, but I think, again, he's going to want to prove a point against this Arkansas secondary, as is Bryce Young, Will Rogers, and the other guys they're going to face. They're going to have to figure out what they're going to do without Jalen Catalon and Miles Slusher, depending on the severity of their injuries. We don't know it to this point. It's just Sunday right now. Maybe we'll get an update from Coach Pittman tomorrow. But that's arguably their two best secondary players. I think Simony and Blair has an argument to be made about that. But if you don't have those guys for a either short or long duration, I think there's a chance that you see Coach Odom implore more of the 3-down lineman drop 8 approach that we saw more of last year than the 4-man pass rush that we saw Elias. He also blitzed a lot, so I don't know how his thought process changed heading in next week. They have some improvement, as does the offense does. KJ would tell you he missed some. Warren Thompson had a great slant route that he just threw it 5 yards at his feet, and I guarantee that was eating KJ alive. Both teams, both units have improvement. I know Fletcher probably wants to get some more height on his punts and more distance as well. All in all, though, you won the football game against a ranked opponent that was in the college football playoff last year, Courtney. You got to be happy, as Sam Pittman was post-game yesterday.
We gave out our game balls to different players just in the segment before this one. Do you have a player of the game that you would give a game ball to?
I would say that your Rocket Sanders pick is really hard to go against. I mean, no Dominique Johnson. We still don't know his timeline 100% if he'll be back for South Carolina, Missouri State, or later on in the year. Rocket is still a true sophomore, and he was tasked with a big load yesterday. We saw some A.J. Green. We saw some Rashad Dominion, who looked great in the few plays that we saw of him. And he goes for over 100 yards and had a few broken tackles. And anytime you see, it was funny, I saw Darren McFadden last night out on Dixon Street.
Nice.
And anytime you see a Razorback wear number 5 as a running back, there's a little nostalgia. There's a little comfort there. And I know there's the debate, retire the number, not retire the number, whatever. But Rocket has a certain weight that he has to carry if he wears that number. And going for over 100 yards in your first game as a true starter, I think is a great start for what his season could be in 2022.
Yeah, I made a hot take that he would have over 1,000 yards of rushing this year. Look, I know it was a hot take. I know, but I think he can do it.
He could do it. At the SEC, it's going to be what he said yesterday is he gets helped out by just KJ Jefferson being there. And then when you see Malik Hornsby being featured, they have to account for the defense. Malik Hornsby throwing the ball, running the ball, KJ running the ball or throwing the ball. And sometimes Rocket and the other guys will have so much larger lanes to run through just because the defense is having to figure out all these different alignments and this stuff. So I thought it was pretty cool for him to say the first thing Rocket said after the bat, after he busted 100 yards, thank you, KJ, and the offensive line. It's always good to see a young man immediately credit his teammates, which is exactly what he did.
Yeah, I love that as well in the press conference, too. For you, Ty, this win, obviously a big one, and the guys talked about it. They have some things they need to clean up, that's for sure. But this win kind of put everybody on notice, right? Because there was an element of, hey, we don't know. There were people picking Cincinnati to win this game. There was
Old Jack Harlow, come on. He has to play a free concert in Fayetteville around.
Oh, he definitely does. Okay. I don't know if people would go knowing he picked Cincinnati to win this game. But again, what does this do in terms of Arkansas's look to every other team?
I think it just sends a message, and you got a message sent last year to college football that it's not going to be a walk in the park to play Arkansas. Now, there were teams that beat him, the likes of Alabama and Georgia. Oh, by the way, 2 teams that were in the national championship. That's going to happen in the SEC. But anytime you face off against this Razorback team, it's not going to be a 56-3 drubbing like we've seen in years past. This is going to be a team that you have to earn every yard, every inch, and every play against. And even if you somehow walk into Donald W. Reynolds Razorback Stadium with the victory or walk out, you're going to have to earn it. You're going to be battered. You're going to be bruised. And I think this offensive line is just going to start getting rolling. I think the defense will get better. And I think that if you bought season tickets or single game tickets, or if you swindle your way into that stadium somehow, some way, it will be one of the best investments that you've made of your life.
And speaking of that, the players also credited the crowd to helping them in huge situations. They helped the defense in really crucial points of the game. How much do you think that will help moving forward, having the fans show up like they did yesterday?
So I think it was the 7th largest paid attendance in Donald W. Reynolds Razorback Stadium
yeah.
with over 74,000. In the third quarter of that game, with a little over 6 minutes to go, KJ and Rocket have the mishandled snap and bobble. Cincinnati takes over inside their own 5. The crowd caused 4 penalties, 2 delay of games, an illegal procedure, and I think a false start. Every single player said that was the crowd. They just got them, Drew and Bumper just got the guys riled up, and then all of a sudden the crowd got into it, and it was over. And that's what this stadium, that's what this fan base can do. We see it in Bud Walton Arena. We see it in Baum-Walker Stadium. We have still not seen what a full house Donald W. Texas was awesome last year. That sucker wasn't at 80. You get that sucker to 80,000, and the likes of Alabama comes in here week 5. We're going to truly find out how dominant of a home field advantage you have, because we haven't seen since Garth Brooks, which doesn't count, we haven't seen what the atmosphere can be like with the renovations and the standing room and everything that goes into that beautiful thing that we call Donald W. Reynolds Razorback Stadium.
And it's huge because of the amount of home games there are this year. I mean, this team is not on the road as much, and that home field advantage needs to be a good one. I mean, even SEC Nation said this is a tough place to play because of Razorback fans.
Arkansas fans know that they have an impact, and you are given more credit for what you do in basketball and baseball. I think any SEC coach in those leagues would tell you that those are probably the 2 most difficult venues to play in this league. Football goes under the radar a little bit, but then you have coaches and players of opposing teams here and there say, that was the toughest place that I ever played. If this team is good, which they are this year, it is not an easy place to walk into this stadium and get a victory. And you think about the games, as you just brought up, Courtney, they're not going to put these games at 11 o'clock if both teams are ranked. Arkansas is going to be ranked probably the rest of the season. That being said, 2 ranked teams, or a team like Arkansas who's ranked, and a quote-unquote blue blood or television market team that sucks in viewers, they're going to put that game at night, or they're going to put that game at 2:30 on CBS, causing the games, as Coach Pittman said last year, fans might get lathered up a little more. And when you get lathered up, you typically are a little louder and more talkative. It's typically how it goes.
Oh, definitely. Final question for you, Ty. You mentioned South Carolina, Spencer Rattler. They're coming to town next week. What do you think this team needs to do in order to refocus, make sure that they are on it for that game?
I think offensively, there's not a ton that you can improve on. Now, if you ask Kendall Browse or Sam Pittman, there's thousands of things that they probably listed off. But I think the average Joe, the average fan, you as the average television viewer here, would be like, offense, there are some issues, but I like what we did certain segments, especially the end of the game. 5 minutes to go, KJ says, nope, we're just going to close it out right here. Sam Pittman was overjoyed how that game ended, and Cincinnati couldn't get him off the field. I think defensively, I know Rattler threw 2 interceptions against Georgia State, but you got to figure out how to confuse him, how to make sure that he doesn't get in a rhythm, because he was the #1 quarterback, dual threat coming out of high school for a reason. The guy's got skills. Now, we've yet to see if he can produce consistently week to week in the SEC, but I think Barry Odom defensively, we're going to see more 3 down than we will 4 down linemen this week, just because the secondary, with what we assume are losses of Miles Slusher and Jalen Kyle, at least for this week, I think we're going to see more of that 3 down look that we saw more of last year.
Interesting. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the show. As always, Ty, we appreciate having you.